Hi, welcome. My name is Ms. Flasati. This is my video for consumer math class. Just a little bit about myself. I've been at Valley Oaks for quite a while now. I teach 3 classes. I'm the 9th grade advisor. I also get to help a lot with teacher and administrative support, and I really enjoy it. I have 3 kids. You can see here last summer we were able to travel to Normandy and all around Europe. It has been very challenging this year not being able to travel. What I'd like to do for you today is go through a little bit of the class syllabus, explain the parts of the class, show you the curriculum that we'll be using, and just talk about some general questions that you might have. First, with your books that you pick up, you should have a copy of this syllabus. It is on your students' Google Class that they'll be signing up for in boot camp. But as you can see from the course description, consumer math is a class that you will most likely feel very comfortable in. We will be overviewing the foundations in personal finance with an emphasis on budgeting for the future. You can read our goals there. The class is set up to meet the National Financial Literacy Standards. We have a lot of different projects that we implement throughout the year. I will do my absolute best to make all of those projects happen while we're in distance learning. Our required texts, we use Dave Ramsey's material called Foundations in Personal Finance. I have given you a resource on your student's text sheet that I would love for you to check out. And it is Dave's story. So I give you a link that you can log in, view Dave's story, how he came to be a financial literacy coach, and hopefully that'll give you a little bit of background to our curriculum. We do use also Google Classroom. Just want to show that to you. Actually, let me show you the foundations, our online curriculum here. Your student will get a code at their tech boot camp, and this is what they'll be mostly working through, other than a few hands-on activities and the different projects we complete throughout the year. But you can see that our first chapter is called Introduction to Personal Finance. They'll click on View, and then they will only have access to those parts of the chapter for the week that I want them to finish. I will show you the agenda in a minute, but I try to match word for word for what the parts are that they're supposed to complete so that they don't get confused. But they'll be watching videos, they'll be working on some vocabulary that they just probably aren't exposed to yet, and they'll be doing a lot of checks, checking for understanding. This measuring your project is a little true-false quiz, and then they also do journal questions through their Google Classroom. Everything that we do in class will be driven through their Google Classroom. At their tech boot camp, they will be getting their code for this. Each week, I will be posting their agenda and their work by Mondays at 3. That's also the day that I ask and the time for them to turn in all of their weekly work. But you can see here, it's just a stream of material that they will be taught to go to classwork, and then everything for the week that will be graded will be posted under that week number and date. So their weekly agenda with links to their different assignments, and then any assignment in Google Classroom that they'll need to complete. And again, all of that will be set up during their tech boot camp. Coming back to the syllabus, some of the materials that your student will be using this year, I left in the folder, they do not need a 3-ring binder dedicated to the class. I'm not sure how many handouts they'll have. They will be given a spiral notebook when they pick up their books. This spiral notebook is going to be directed by me. I'll be providing notes to them since we don't have an actual textbook for the course. We'll talk about ways that we can get those materials to you, and they will also be available through Google Classroom to print if you want at your house, but you can also pick up copies at our pickup days. They'll of course need pens, pencils, paper, and then one of the most important materials that they will need to have is their calculator. Because we're in distance learning, if they have a phone, they can use their phone calculator. Really, if you just think about what you would use to manage your money, these are the functions that they need to have available to them. So add, subtract, multiply, divide. They'll be working a lot with percentages, but only the basic keys are needed. Okay, continuing on course requirements, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about each of these things as we go, but you can see how the grade book is broken down. They are expected, since they've chosen the Tuesday class, they're expected to participate in our Zoom classes. They'll have hands-on activities. Those will be through the Ramsey material, through Google Classroom activities, and then some handouts that I might have to get to them. Pretty hefty on projects. Some of the projects that they'll be doing this year, they're going to do a project on budgeting to buy a car within 3 years with cash. They will do a lot of budgeting for shopping and spending. They'll learn how to read a pay stub. If they don't have a job yet, this is a pretty big learning curve for them, figuring out where all of their money goes to taxes. Speaking of taxes, in April they will file a simple tax form. It's pretty interesting for them. They will be receiving a fake job where they will get fake paychecks from which they will have to budget and then ultimately pay bills. Both bills with physical checks, possibly. We'll see how I change that, but definitely we have a huge project in the spring with online budgeting, and they pay bills from there. They will also be doing a culminating project in the spring where they will plan and budget for their first apartment, getting an overview of what it will cost them to eventually move out of your home. Your responsibilities for the class. Unlike any other math class, there's not necessarily grading that needs to be done. What you will be doing is providing discussion and feedback to them. I don't have access to the students every day. They do need adult input into their lives in this area of money management. So the more you're willing to discuss and reflect on different assignments they've done, the more that they will learn and grow and hopefully master some of these skills that we are exposing them to. I don't believe I'll have you sign off on anything. I don't anticipate collecting physical projects or papers. But I may ask for you to give feedback to them. If I ever ask for that in print, it's never going to be something that I will grade. It will solely be credit, no credit. I just want to know, since I can't micromanage it, that there is another adult feeding into their learning. They do have tests in this curriculum. They'll have tests at the end of each chapter. They're multiple choice. One thing that we'll talk about in a little bit is that spiral notebook, and that will help them on their tests. We'll have tutoring each week available. Their Zoom classes will be Tuesday. Tutoring is Thursday, and that's actually a good breakdown for them because they've gone a couple of days looking at their material. Again, we post everything through Google Class. And we use Remind, the texting app, to communicate pretty easily. We are getting a voice call portion of Remind anytime, so that will be helpful for me to be able to call you directly. I want to bring your attention to this part of the syllabus called Zoom class attendance. It is my expectation that the student be on time and in the Zoom class. I will ask that you help encourage your student to follow a few best practices with Zoom, and I'll go through that after a little bit. If your student is absent, they absolutely, meaning they missed the Zoom class, they absolutely need to make contact with me. They can do that by texting me over Remind. That will be the easiest. What I will have them do is connect with me during tutoring to make sure that they've had an understanding of the assignments that are posted. The missed opportunity, though, is the discussion that we have during the Zoom time. So it's very important that they attend the class. You can see here the grading policy just breaks down normally, and then here are a few different websites that we'll be using throughout the year. Bringing back up this PowerPoint, here are just some different distance learning tips and Zoom expectations that I have for your student. Again, those weekly agendas that I post, and I'll show you a sample in a minute, they're going to be posted by 3 o'clock on Monday. Also expect the students' work to be completed 3 o'clock on Monday. I would appreciate that your students show up to the scheduled Zoom classes on time. And then also something that will be extremely helpful to your student is if you check, you and the student check the ARIES grades weekly. Oops. Key Zoom expectations. Definitely want you to hear that I want you to communicate if you have a problem, if you can't meet these expectations I have, or if you have a challenge with your Wi-Fi at all, please communicate with me so I can help troubleshoot and move on. So they need to be on time. All classes will be closing after 10 minutes. It gets really hard to manage teaching and the waiting room if we go beyond that. So definitely want them there ready and on time. I would like the student to show their face on the screen. So again, if this is a barrier for your student, please communicate with me so we can work out something that could satisfy that need. You can just imagine if I was in a classroom and teaching to a blank, 20 blank screens. There's no interface with me, and it's like doing a video like I'm doing now. I'm not getting any feedback, even facial expressions. So encourage, please, your student to show their face and to participate. This class is based in discussion, so they absolutely are going to have to speak or at least text through the chat option. Did experience fourth quarter some pretty noisy working areas for students. If your student can set up a quiet area, possibly even use the headphones provided by the school as an option, that would be very helpful. And then just have them prepared with their materials. If they can have their agenda pulled up, if they can have their materials ready to go, that would be fantastic. Again, if you have questions about this or concerns, please send me a text on Remind once you sign up for that. So what your student is going to get in this next week at their boot camp, their technology boot camp, that's written wrong. They're going to be signing up for their Google Classroom. I do ask that the student do that so that they know their username and password. You both will be signing up for your Remind account. Remind is going to be probably the easiest way for both of us to communicate with each other. And again, soon we should be having the phone call option with Remind. And then you'll also be given codes to sign up for our different curriculum that we'll be using right at the beginning. One just keynote to make with you is that students notoriously forget their username and passwords. Because they're only probably working from one device, which hopefully it is at least a Chromebook, not necessarily the phone. But the Chromebook, you can get one from school if you don't have access to one. You can get a Wi-Fi hotspot if you don't have access, so please take advantage of that. But they need to have a place or a system of remembering their username and passwords. I'll provide a paper that they can write these down on their notebook that I've given them, but if they don't want to write it down, or if you don't want them to write it down, please just know that I expect them to have a system for remembering it, in hopes that soon we'll be coming back to campus and doing our work through campus. So what I expect to have the students done with by our first class, which will be August 18th, I think, are these things. They need to have all of their materials gathered, organized, have their calendar looked at. When do they attend Zoom for each of their classes? Map that out for them if they need help with that. They need to have an organized workspace, quiet, computer plug-in area readily available so they don't die and a computer doesn't die in the middle of the class. And then have those different technology pieces signed up for them. If your student has any trouble with this, definitely encourage them to communicate sooner rather than later. Last thing I want to show you is what the agenda looks like each week. So the agenda, you will receive an agenda for every class every week. You can see on my agenda, everything's labeled by the week number, and that matched with Google Classroom. I also tell you so you can kind of plan your family times when their test is. So Chapter 1, we will be testing on September 1st. This is a Tuesday. They do not want to miss the Zoom class on that Tuesday because they will be taking their test, most likely towards the end of that class. The test will probably take about 10 minutes or so not too long. What I've decided to do this year for our agendas, in this top part, I am going to just overview those assignments that will be put into the grade book for your students. So you can see here for week 1, they'll have at least 5 grades that are posted. And I decided just to do this as a little bullet point so that they could check off. Some students in this class choose to work not necessarily daily, but bulk it and do it every couple of days. I don't love that, so what I've also done, like my normal, is I have broken it down in a daily schedule. So I've taken a week's worth of work, I've broken it down to what I feel like is an acceptable amount of work to complete each day so that they learn, but most importantly, they don't get overwhelmed and behind in other classes, because this works out typical for this class would be about 45 minutes a day. When we get into projects, if they skip a day, they could be spending quite a few hours working on projects if they choose to procrastinate. So again, at the top, I will show you, at the top, I'll provide what's going to be graded, and then at the bottom, I'll break it down a little bit each day. Okay? So I think that is it for this class. I'm super excited. This is my most favorite class to teach. I wish my own personal children had to have it for their education. They're very lucky they have me because I make them do it with us. But if you have questions as we get going, please make sure you're signing up for your Remind account and you just start sending me texts and let me respond to them. Again, the codes for your Remind, your student will be receiving at the Tech Bootcamp, so look forward to that. If you have any questions, look forward to answering them, and I definitely look forward to working with you this year. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.